What's up, everyone? My name is Mark Hawk, and we took a trip over to Cine Expo 2015 last weekend, and we kind of wanted to recap on some of the stuff we got to see. Now, if you're not familiar with Cine Expo, what it is it's basically a trade show that comes and shows off a lot of high-end digital SLR stuff, a bunch of production-level stuff, but tied into that is a lot of action camera manufacturers, a lot of action camera accessories, such as new gimbals on the market, and then we also saw a bunch of stuff for drones and aerial photography because a lot of that is being tied into the action camera market. There's definitely a lot of interest in it, and I'm sure you guys are already all aware of this, but there was a lot of cool stuff. And we also started to connect with some of the PR people that we've only talked to through email. We started to try and get a hold of people we've been trying to ask questions to for a few months. So we're going to go over some of the stuff we saw there, and it's going to be a very loose sort of format. It was just me on set solo, but anyway, let's get to it. So the first booth we got to go check out was the guys over at Polar Pro. Now we met up with Jeff Overall. Now if you're not familiar, Polar Pro has been making a wide variety of accessories for the past few years. They started off by just making filters for the GoPro, and they've expanded into making microphones, power poles, different types of mounts and cases, as well as filters for aerial drones. Now, some of the stuff they were showcasing was their new filter line for the Phantom 3 cameras. They have a new 3-pack for about $70, and what it has is it has a polarized filter, which is pretty good for getting rid of lens flares and just adding a little more contrast to your picture, and then some neutral density filters such as a 2-stop or a 3-stop. So, when you're filming sunsets, you can put on the 3-stop neutral density filter and just help eliminate some of that high glare and just get an overall sort of more properly exposed picture. They also showed off something that was really cool called the PowerVault. Now what this is it's a soft-shelled GoPro case that you kind of put all your gear in, but instead of just holding all your gear, it'll actually charge all your batteries. Now it's got a built-in 5200 milliamp battery, and that's about the strength of 5 GoPro batteries. Now the batteries will dock right in there. You could use a USB charger to charge it, and you're not limited to just GoPro batteries. You can charge your phone and stuff like that. So it's a really cool case, and it's soft shell, so it's easy to kind of store in things. It's not hard shell like a Pelican case, but it's also still waterproof, and it has a nice little zipper. It seemed pretty cool. Retails for $100, and we're definitely going to check that out later, along with a bunch of other Polar Pro stuff we have sort of stacking up because they're just releasing stuff so fast I can barely keep up. The one thing that I was expecting to see a lot of at the show was VR tech, just in sort of early stages or just sort of mock-ups and stuff like that, but there wasn't a whole lot. But the one vendor that was there, that was talking and actually showing off gear, was 360 Hero. Now they showed up with a whole bunch of various rigs that you can use to mount a variety of GoPros in, whether it be just a standard 6-camera setup, all the way up to things like a 13 or 14 camera setup. They also had a cool sort of dome lens one called the Abyss, but their price ranges on it were kind of crazy. So the Abyss was somewhere in the couple of thousands, while some of these 6 to 14 GoPro Hero setups range from about 500 to about 900 and then on. And none of those include, obviously, the GoPros. And none of them include the software either that you're going to be using to stitch a lot of that stuff together. That's also going to run you a couple $100. But a lot of this stuff is on early tech, so people are getting out there and experimenting with it. But it's one of the few places, again, at this show that was really showing off stuff. But I got a chance to speak with Rick over at DJI. Now, I know there's a lot of stuff going on with their Phantoms and their drones and stuff like that, but I was really interested in what their Phantom handheld gimbal was going to be, when it was going to be released. Does it include the camera? So I was asking Rick these questions, and he basically told me it would be out somewhere in the next few months. It was going to retail for around $500 to $600, but it wouldn't give me an exact price. But the one thing he was able to confirm for me that it actually does come mounted with the camera. You obviously will be able to order a version that doesn't come with the camera. If you do have an Inspire 1 and you want to save some money, you can order the handheld gimbal and just sort of snap that on there, or vice versa, get the gimbal and then buy the camera separately later. Because the day after the show aired, the DJI announced their new drone. I think it was called the Mad Ice or something like that, but basically it's this sort of drone that is kind of a skeleton, and you kind of put all the pieces on there that you want that builds the drone you want to build, and one of that is the standalone 4K camera that they sell, so you can pop that on there. And they were also telling me that the 4K camera that's on the DJI Phantom 3 is essentially the same one that is on the Inspire 1, and he went over some brief differences in it, but he kind of assured me that they were very similar in quality, and that was a little hard-fetched. I really would like to look into that a little more because I really doubt that. But anyway, the handheld gimbal will be out soon, and it will have the camera on there for $550. You don't have to worry about paying, $550 and then get the camera later. Now, one of the camera manufacturers I wasn't actually expecting to be there, but was super stoked to see that they was Garmin. Garmin's actually making one of the most anticipated action cameras for me this year, at least one of the most exciting ones, and that's the Garmin Virb XE and the Garmin Virb X. Now, both of these cameras are successors to last year's Garmin Garmin Virb Elite, which is basically a very overlooked and underrated action camera. It had an amazing quality, it had a great price point, it had a great amount of features. The thing is, it was just a little bulky and kind of when you had to mount it to stuff. This new one, however, is taking sort of a GoPro style of framing, but it's a little longer. But right out of the box, even without a case or anything like that, its built-in body will allow it to go to a depth of 50 meters. It's got a flat lens, so if we do take it underwater, footage should look nice and crisp. Everything's really easy to get to. The micro SD card is right under the front door, as well as the battery, and the battery this time around looks and is better suited. Easy to pull out and stuff like that. It's got like a tab system, and then on top of that, it's got a sensor system that ties into a lot of Garmin's other smart devices. So let's say you have a Garmin watch and you're recording your heart rate while you're doing a jog. It's going to record all that data to the camera. Or let's say you're on a racetrack, you can actually use an OBD sensor, and it's going to pull all of that accurate data coming out of your car and save it in the metadata. Now tie that in with a Garmin smartwatch, and you can see your heart racing as you're taking a turn, and it's going to save all the GPS data, and it's going to have all the G-forces and stuff like that. It's going to have accurate real-world data, and it's not limited to just cars or smartwatches. If you fly a plane, it could take all of that data, and then with the onboard sort of gyro, it'll record all the G-forces and sort of tilt and stuff like that. You'll have accurate GPS location. There's a bunch of stuff, and then you can easily overlay a lot of that stuff using their software. Now, their software makes it really easy once you bring in the footage. It has all of these different layouts that you can use. You can change all the colors. It's very customizable, and it doesn't really get in the way, and it makes it really easy to make an edit. On top of that, it's adding a lot of smart features. So when they were running through the menus for me, I noticed that right off the bat, we had field of view options, which is great. We have a bunch of other resolution options. If you're getting the XE model, you can actually film at 1440p. And what that's going to do is it's going to be a 1080p format that's actually 4:3. And what that extra 1440p vertically will give us is the ability to basically have more top and bottom field of view. So we don't have to worry about tilting it too low or too high. We're also going to be getting about 60 megabits out of the XE model, but I don't know what we're going to get out of the X. There is no Pro mode on the X model, and that one is limited to a 1080p at 30 frames a second, while the XE can do 1080p at 60 frames a second, but I think 1440p was limited at 30 frames a second, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's got Wi-Fi, it's got a bunch of other features, and I'm really excited to get my hands on this one. I'm hoping I can get it a little sooner before release date, but we'll see how that goes. So while I was at the show floor, Sony obviously had a huge presence there. They're showing off a bunch of their high-range cameras and stuff like that. But they also had a big booth dedicated to their action camera department, and that's where I met one of their PR representatives who put me in contact with one of their hires, and now we have somebody that we can kind of communicate with at Sony, because I know you guys have had a lot of suggestions on how they can improve their action camera line of cameras. We've also discovered some issues together, and it would be really nice to get some questions answered that we've had as a community. So now we have sort of a gateway to get there. So if you guys have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, because I'm going to be sending them a big list in about a week or two here, and we're just going to see how they handle that. Also, if you're interested in picking up a Sony action camera, I do have a few discount codes. If you see this box below green, shoot me an email over at markhawkcam@gmail.com. If the box is red, those codes are gone. Kodak had a presence on the showroom floor, and they were showing off the SP360. Now, we did a bunch of videos with this back in late November of 2014. We did a bunch of quick looks, tips and tricks on how to actually use the camera. And one of the big roadblocks we kept running into with actually, really using the camera to its full potential was we didn't really have a real good way to share the footage that we were recording. There just wasn't a service available. Kodak didn't have one, and its software really left very little to do with the footage once you've recorded it. But now they've teamed up with YouTube, and they are one of the few camera manufacturers now in YouTube 360. Now what you're going to do is you just upload the footage raw out of the camera after you've edited it, and YouTube will recognize that it's a spherical video, and it'll allow the user to look around all of the environment with their mouse. If they have an iPad or a phone, they can actually physically move the phone in real time, in real space, 360 degrees, and look all around them. And it's a really cool way to share some of the Kodak footage. Again, this is another case where we didn't really have somebody to talk to over at Kodak. So now if you guys have any questions, comments, suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and we'll send them out an email in a week or two, and we'll sort of get the ball rolling. But it's really nice to have a really meaningful way to share some of that 360 footage. I also stopped by over at the Empire RC booth and noticed that they had a handheld gimbal designed for the Sony line of action cameras. I responded really well. It worked really good with the X1000V. They assured me it would work with the AS200 and other Sony lines of action cameras. And this is really nice because there really haven't really been any gimbals for the Sony line of action cameras on the market. Everything you've seen out there today has mostly been custom built. So this is one that you can order now, again from EmpireRC.com. And yeah, it was really nice to see more manufacturers supporting the Sony line of action cameras. So as I turned the corner, I found myself right in the middle of the 3DR booth. Now, if you're not familiar with 3DR, they're a drone manufacturer that actually has been gaining a lot of attention with their new 3DR solo drone. So as the name implies, the solo drone actually sort of excels at being used by a solo operator. Now, what do I mean by that? Is basically anything you see in other videos that normally would take 2 operators, the solo drone is pushing to have that all done in a safe and really high quality way with a solo operator. So we'll start off with the remote real quick. The remote has a bunch of tactile feedback, so you basically can get a bunch of information through the remote. It's a little wider, set up a little more like a game controller. It's got trigger buttons, so you can kind of pressure sensitive, like raise and tilt the camera and stuff like that. But one of the hard things to do while flying is if you're trying to fly, rotate, and then tilt up the camera, it's very hard to keep that all smooth. Now, what you're allowed to do with what you can do with the solo drone is you can actually set up keyframes for that camera. So let's say I wanted to start off looking at the ground, and then by the end of the shot look straight ahead, and I can set a keyframe for the first position, a keyframe for the second, and then I can give it a speed on how to transition between those two, so then I can just focus on flying the drone and not have to worry about tilting the camera. It also comes pre-programmed with a bunch of different movesets. So another popular sort of drone thing lately is called the droney. But the thing is, you have to kind of be looking at your screen to operate the drone in a safe fashion as it pulls away. However, with a lot of the preset motions, you can press a button once you're in the set zone, and it will do the motion. So a droney will automatically take off looking at you, and you can wave at the camera as opposed to you looking down at a screen. Or you can say, do a 360 pattern around me, but maybe the space you're in is kind of wide and you want it to go far out, so you can expand the ring of the circle. You can change the speed of that. You can adjust the camera while the drone's doing its own motion. And unlike that viral video of the Lily you might have seen a few weeks ago, a lot of stuff that the Lily is attempting to do, the solo drone can do now. It can actually follow the user based on the cell phone that it's used that's paired to the remote control. So if you're hiking up a mountain range, you can have the drone take off from the ground and then follow you and then land back at the ground, replace the batteries, and keep going throughout the entire day. You're not limited to batteries, and you don't have to catch it in your hand and risk potential injuries. There's a lot of stuff that the 3DR solo drone is doing that is really cool. It's not the sexiest drone, but it is a little beefier. It can take quite a bit of a punch, and they assured me that its extra weight actually adds a little more stability up in the air, and they say it's roughly got a 20-minute flight time. The only real thing I wasn't excited about was sort of the pricing scheme. Now, it's $1,000 for the base drone, which doesn't sound bad for what you get, and the fact that you can swap out batteries and it's a little beefier. All that's really cool. The part where the price starts to add up is when you consider the gimbal you have to get. Now, the nice thing is it will have different types of gimbals throughout time. Currently, it only supports the GoPro, and the GoPro can be controlled from the remote. You can change the settings up to half a mile away, start and stop recording, which is great. And in the future, you'll be able to throw other gimbals on there for other action cameras you might want to use instead. The only problem is that gimbal right now is $500, and then if you tack on the action camera of your choice, which we'll say is at least a minimum $300 to $400, that $1,000 drone is now pretty much $1,800 to $1,900. And looking at competitors like DJI, you can get a lot of that for $1,250, so that's one thing to consider. But there's a lot of cool things with the 3DR Solo. I definitely would consider it, especially if you're not somebody who's definitely dedicated to GoPro, though however right now it's pretty much limited to GoPro. But you can get the basics, and you have a little training software it comes with, so it's pretty cool. So I got to meet up with the team over at Light Motion, and they briefly ran me through their new SideKick series. Now the SideKick is a sort of light that mounts to the side of the GoPro in a really tasteful way and actually connects through the GoPro mount itself. Now they have two models. They have the Flood and the Duo. The Flood offers a really nice sort of flood diffused lighting at 600 lumens, while the Duo actually has the floodlight from the Flood, and then it also has a more spotlight that's about 450 lumens. It's a little more directed. It's a really nice design. It actually has different levels of the beam and stuff like that. It's got its own built-in battery to charge. It was pretty cool. It works pretty well. It was simple enough, and it just looked really nice. And the last manufacturer I got to see is a little company you might have heard of called GoPro. GoPro has a huge presence at the Cine Expo. All the lanyards are GoPro themed. A big part of the showroom floor space is GoPro, and they were there in full force like they are every year. So one of the more exciting pieces of future tech GoPro was showing off, and one with a lot of possibilities, was the HeroCast. Now what this is, it's a really small solution for sending wireless broadcast signals, so you can get really nice HD signals coming off of your athletes in real time, and then you can then take that footage and send it out for everyone to see. So if you imagine you're watching a hockey game and you cut to a perspective of the goalie, no longer does it have to be locked from the net itself, but it can actually be on the goalie and it can be wirelessly transmitted from anywhere. You can have athletes at the X Games all over the field, and you don't have to have them wired up. You could have that signal transferring in real time, and then it could just be broadcast out. It's really cool. It's really great for wireless sort of systems, but it's not something the average consumer is going to get because it costs roughly $2,000 per camera. That's kind of a lot to drop on just doing a wireless stream, but it is still really cool tech, and it'll be really cool to see its impact in the market. We also got a rundown of the new GoPro Hero with the built-in LCD screen. Now the LCD screen is touch, but it is not touch in the same way the GoPro Hero 4 Silver is. Now you can tap on it, but you can't swipe, but your tap responses are much faster since it doesn't have to process a lot, but we lose a lot of that swiping off screen, so there's physical places you have to press to actually access certain items. It also has built-in Wi-Fi now, so you can connect it to your smartphone and change settings, power on and off the remote. And also, when you have that black case, you can also use the smartphone to make it beep in case you lose it in the dark. You can quickly find it, which is pretty cool. But we're going to have a dedicated quick look video on that in just a bit. You can click that in the bottom right if that's green. You can go to it. Otherwise, they were teasing some stuff with their VR tech that's coming out in the first quarter of 2016, and if you hadn't heard, GoPro has announced they're developing their own quadcopter, which is also set to come out in Q1 of 2016, but they weren't really saying much other than a few teasers, and I couldn't really get them to say much more than that. So the way GoPro ends the show basically every year is they have this big giveaway, and attendees can come to the GoPro booth over the course of 2 days and actually put in their email to sign up to receive a $100 off voucher. It's supposed to come within a few days. I haven't got mine yet, but it would be really sweet if that showed up because I definitely want to get a few more GoPros before that VR tech comes out. But yeah, they do this big sort of raffle system. A bunch of people win stuff. They throw out t-shirts. They do the typical GoPro chant and stuff like that, and they really get the crowd all riled up. The one big downside was that during the final raffle, like this really giant package, it's pretty much like the GoPro of the Day giveaway that they used to do, where you get basically one of everything GoPro makes. They must have called maybe 9 or 10 names before the raffle, before there was an attendee that actually was there to receive the prize, and I mean, that person was super stoked, but man, there are 9 very, very upset people out there. And yeah, that was the Cine Gear show. It definitely was a bit of an exciting one for me. Got to speak with a lot of people. We have a lot more reps to get in contact with now. We have a lot more people to bug about maybe getting early review units. That way we can get out video coverage for you guys sooner, which would be really cool for me. And yeah, I'm really excited for this show and what Markhawk Cam has coming later this year. As you guys know, I'm big on the socials, so you can hit me up on Instagram or Twitter if you guys have any questions. I'm more on Instagram just because I don't like the text limit of Twitter. We also just launched a new version of markhawkcam.com. We're still working on it. We have a lot of cool plans on it, but one of the bigger things is going to be if we start doing reviews a little more often. Under our review, we'll also have a user sort of rated review, so based on your guys' opinion, it'll raise the star. That way there's as much transparency as possible of what I think and what your user experience is. It should be kind of cool to have a community building experience. So we're going to be playing with that a lot more throughout the next few weeks. So definitely start checking that out. Again, follow me, share this video, So yeah, if any of you wanted to say anything to Kodak or Sony, make sure you leave that in the comments section below, because we are going to send that out relatively soon and start getting some feedback. And even if you don't make that 2-week cut, feel free to leave something in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to, see it and respond to it. Anyway, guys, I'm Mark Cam. That was Cine Gear 2015, and I'll see you out there. Have a good one.